Hey Summoners, and welcome back to another episode of OP Patch Predictions. My name is Nathan Ng, and today we're going to be talking about some of the changes coming on patch 11.8 and how they may change or fail to change the state of the game. So hit that sub button for good luck in your games, and let's get right into the video. The most significant change that we're going to be seeing this patch is the touch up to Rammus, with the biggest part of him being the mini rework to his ultimate. Rammus pretty much has the same kit as he's had since he was put into the game over a decade ago. So why need the change now? Well, to talk about why he's being changed, let's look at his current form. Let me start off by saying that Rammus is basically never statistically that bad of a champion. His super simple kit gives him easy to execute ganks, and he is an incredibly strong counter to AD champions, namely ADCs and the squishy melee champions like Yasuo and Yi. But that super easy to use kit and his anti-fun feel for the enemy is what makes it pretty hard for Riot to balance him. If he's ever overbuffed, he's able to snowball in the early game, and he's basically becoming an assassin capable of killing any carry that he lands his taunt on, all the while being as hard to kill as any other tank. Anytime this happens, he's immediately an S tier pick in the jungle and is quickly nerfed back down to just being above average. Or should I say, just a bit better than okay. But even when Rammus is statistically just doing okay, that doesn't mean that he's exactly in a balanced state. In fact, there are a lot of champions that fall into this category. Let's look at the stats. They have an average overall performance, but on a game-to-game basis, they thrive in certain situations, but fall super flat in others, like a lot of my jokes. Champions like this are hard to fine-tune, since buffs just make them insanely OP in situations that they're already good in, while the nerfs make them even more unplayable in the bad ones. In these cases, Riot aims to do small-scale reworks, usually keeping the entire kit the same, but with an added mechanic or two. Or like in the case of Diana, they swapped her E and her R to give her a much more well-rounded kit that allows for buffs and nerfs in other areas. And that brings us to today's question of the day. What champion do you think needs a mini rework? We want to know what champions you think could be healthier with just some minor touch-ups like we're seeing here with Rammus. Let us know your answers in the comments down below, and let's get back to talking about our favorite, Armadillo. Against comps that are filled with carries, he's really OP. Even though his Thorns damage may make him a hard counter specifically to high attack speed, pretty much any comp without a frontline means that he can easily use his Mach speed to make picks that lead to towers, dragons, or barons. On the other hand, against comps that have a very strong frontline, he can feel almost useless in teamfights. Since Rammus is more about picking a target to lock down, but his Powerball is stopped by making contact with any unit, beefy bruisers and tanks can block him from ever reaching the backline. And he isn't just as useful as a straight up front to back fighter as the other tanks like Cho'Gath or Sion. So against comps like these, if you don't snowball super hard at the laning phase, you'll be pretty much powerless when grouping for 5v5s. Powerball? More like powerless ball. So our TLDR for this is that Rammus is super good at ganking early, making picks, and locking down the squishy targets. But he is hard countered by thick frontliners that can easily stop him from reaching the backline carries. As a result, his win rate just basically fluctuates with the meta. Basically, the less tanks in the meta, the better he is. So, back to the problem of how to effectively buff Rammus. If you just throw a ton of damage on him, or make a CC last longer, we're not really going to be getting anywhere. Yes, Rammus would be doing better as an overall pick, but it's just making him more oppressive against champions that already struggle to deal with him, and it just raises the feelings of anti-fun and no counterplay. These are two things that Riot hates to see in the game. And that's where the mini rework comes in. Instead of overbuffing his already existing mechanics, Riot is tackling his biggest weakness, his inability to reach his carries in certain situations. If you haven't already seen the changes, they are reworking Rammus' ultimate to be a ground targeted jump that slows all targets in the impact zone. If you're using Powerball when you cast your ultimate, targets in the center of the circle are also knocked up. After landing, you emit shockwaves at damage and apply a stacking slow similar to the current Rammus. And as for the range, the leap has a dynamic cast range equal to 130% of your average movement speed in the last second before casting it. Simply put, without using your Q or having any other movement speed buffs, you'll probably do a short range hop. But if you're zooming in with your Powerball, Turbo Chem Tank, and whatever other movement speed increases that you may have from your runes or your teammates, you can reach some pretty insane ranges. Even without some crazy clickbait build, you'll be able to dive over the enemy frontline and reach the carries in the back. And it's not just teamfights that are affected. On the live patch, Rammus ganks can be avoided by dodging through a minion wave or any other units like pets that can block his Powerball. He's also super susceptible to CC, with champions like Syndra, Thresh, and Janna being able to easily deflect his ganks. But with this new ultimate, you can use your ultimate to ignore all CC, landing smack on your targets, knocking them up, and chaining your taunt onto that. By the time the taunt wears off, your ultimate slow will have ramped up a bit, and they'll all be but dead to your teammates. On top of getting around his previous weakness, this also opens up new avenues for ganking by giving Rammus the ability to leap over walls. So when you see a flashless mid laner farming under their turret, feel free to coordinate a dive with your teammates from the enemy's own jungle. Anyway, with that change, we'll refer back to our previous strengths and weaknesses sheet for Rammus. His early game was already pretty strong, with solid ganking power, and now it's even better. His mid to late game has really strong pick potential, and he's really strong in fights where he can reach the squishies. His one major weakness was being easily peeled, since he isn't too useful as a front to back style tank, but that weakness is pretty much erased. Removing that one super glaring weakness makes it easier to buff him and nerf him in other departments, but the thing is, Ride isn't really doing any compensation nerfs yet. Sure, they took 20 damage off his max rank Q, and a quarter of a second off his max rank taunt, but they actually buffed his taunt at level. On top of that, they buffed his W. Basically, you won't feel the nerfs, and he's basically better in every single department. I'm sure we'll be seeing more nerfs in 11.9, or maybe just some hotfixes shortly after the patch launches, but you'll absolutely want to be abusing this pick as soon as he goes live. Be sure that you're subbed to this channel so you don't miss out on any of the content that will be surely pumping out over the terms of items, runes, and strats that you need to abuse such an OP pick. And if you love learning from our content but you want even more help to guide you in your own way, be sure to visit us at ProGuides.com. We have top tier coaches that can help you guys with everything that you possibly need, from the basic fundamentals to more advanced techniques and even some secret tips and tricks that they picked up and developed themselves as players at the top of the ladder. Now without further ado, let's get back to the rest of the patch. Looking now to some other buff champions, 3 really stand out. The first of this is VLADIMIR. Riot is always hesitant above VLADIMIR due to how dominant he becomes in higher elos. While 1 second being taken off the cooldown of a single ability is definitely on the cautious side, it's still a pretty decent buff for VLADIMIR. 1 second may not seem like a lot, but when the ability is already a 5-second cooldown, this means that you're getting 20% off the cooldown removed. This makes his winning lanes even better, and allows you to more gracefully lose some of the harder matchups, with the buffs basically meaning that you have 20% more healing to work with to survive laning phase and make it to those late game team fights where VLADIMIR really starts to shine. Once you reach the full build, you'll be able to have 100 ability haste, aka 50% cooldown reduction. With this buff, your Q's cooldown will be going from 2.5 to 2 seconds at this point. Again, I know that half a second may not seem like much, but think of it this way. In those super long drawn out fights, every 10 seconds you're getting an extra Q cast. That means more damage and a ton of healing for VLADIMIR in the late game. Another champion that should be moving up as a really strong pick is Zac. In fact, even before this patch, he's already been on our radar as a solid pick. His E gives him some really solid ganks, able to slingshot over walls, especially at rank 5 when you max the range out. Since you can literally gank from anywhere, there's basically no way to fully ward out against Zac's ganks. This puts a ton of pressure on immobile laners as they won't know where you are and they might concede lane even if you're nowhere near them. On top of his ganks, he has super strong team fighting. The same ability that gives him strong ganking power also lets him dive into the enemy backline, where he can be an incredibly disruptive force as he turns the backline into a bounce house. On top of that, he does a pretty big amount of damage to squishy ADCs, with them having little room to trade back on, since they're more occupied with trying to escape his jiggly wrath. So, if he has good ganks, strong team fighting, and does decent amount of damage for a tank, why are they buffing him? The honest answer is, I don't know. Even looking at stats, Zac barely has a positive win rate when looking at all elos, with it going up as you narrow down to the higher elos. The only weakness that Zac really has are the first few levels of the game. At this point, he's a weaker skirmisher, and his ganks are pretty weak due to his E's low range at lower ranks. But the thing is, he's a tank. He shouldn't be good at early game skirmishing. More damage on his spammable ability helps buff him in that department. W is pretty much all of his clear strength, and since you spam it literally dozens of time in each jungle clear, adding 10 damage onto it really adds up. Quicker clear speed obviously means more XP, and that means you'll reach the higher ranks of your E quicker, allowing you to apply even more pressure for your laners. On top of the base damage increase, they're also doubling the AP ratio, making it so that every 100 AP increases the W by 4% of your target's max HP. I don't think that Mage Zac is gonna be the norm, but it definitely opens up possibilities like going Demonic Embrace on Zac in your build. Or maybe even Zanya's or Ralai's, or no, I could be wrong, and full AP Jello Nuke maybe isn't the future. The last big buff that we're seeing is onto Rumble. Since his move to the mid lane, Rebel has been somewhat of a balanced nightmare. When he's strong, he has it all. He has wave clear, poke, all-in potential, and even a shield to shrug off damage from range opponents. He can lane pretty much against anyone, beating out anybody who tries to oppose him, or roaming when his opponents concede the lane. But if you really want to take away from those oppressive strengths, he's basically useless since he's an early game bully who really relies on either snowballing off his own lane or using his ultimate on roams to get the other lanes ahead. This patch is giving him a buff, labeled as a role adjustment focused on moving him from mid to top. His magic resist is going down. His overheated autos now have a lowered base damage but do 6% of his target's max HP, and when overheated he gains 50% attack speed. Also, his E now reduces MR by 10%, with that going up to 15% when he uses his E while his C is in the danger zone. Like the slow effect, hitting a target with 2 harpoons in a row causes the debuff to stack additively. All in all, it actually looks like these changes are going to be pretty successful in accomplishing the goals that Riot has set. On live, Rumble really struggles to deal with top laners that he can't kill in one combo, which basically means that any bruiser can build into HP and MR. The magic resist shred from his E helps get past their tankiness, with the massive buffs to his overheated auto attacks making him even better in longer and drawn out fights. It's too early to say exactly what is going to be good on Rumble, but it may be meta to go items like Riftmaker and Nashor's Tooth to play more like a duelist. Pretty much all the other buffs that we're seeing are mediocre at best. Sure, a buff is a buff, but 20 damage on LeBlanc's Q isn't going to make her pickable into more comps, nor is 2 seconds off of Lee Sin's E going to do much to help him with the other OP picks in the meta. Though, I do not really want to see LeBlanc in this meta. I really don't. Please. She's not fun to go against, alright? Stop buffing her. Anyway, if you're good at Lee Sin, you'll still have to work very hard to win games versus more meta picks, and if you're bad, you'll just lose. Same with Cassiopeia. Early farming will definitely be a little bit nicer, but after you have a tier and a lost chapter, you won't feel that much of a difference. While there are a ton of small buffs and notes for Aphelios, he's definitely not going to be an ultra OP pick. Contrary to 200-year memes, Aphelios has statistically been one of the worst ADCs since his release. Yes, he was incredibly overpowered in pro play, but if you don't know how to play him super well, he's instantly a D-tier champ. For that reason, he's pretty much always been a 45% win rate in gold and under, and even in diamond, he's rarely above a 48% win rate. So with this change, we can maybe expect to see challenger and pro players start picking him up more, but he's definitely not going to be OP if you're not in that extremely small demographic.
So, that was our High Elo Coaches OP Patch Predictions 11.8 edition. Let us know if you guys agree or disagree with any of these picks, but either way, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure you sub so you never miss out on any content such as this. Also, it's a little known fact, but ProGuides YouTube subscribers actually have the highest luck in getting good teammates in their ranked games, and they're also incredibly good looking. It's crazy, I mean, only if you sub though. Anyway, I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, and as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.